Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu den Pressekonferenzen dieses ersten Wettbewerbstages der Berlinale. Und wir beginnen mit einer guten Bekannten bei den Filmfestspielen, Annette K. Olesen aus Dänemark. Es ist ihr 4. Spielfilm und zum 3. Mal ist sie bei der Berlinale vertreten. Diesmal mit LILLE SOLDAT. Und das ist ein Film gar nicht untypisch für Dänemark, denn dort reagiert man filmisch sehr schnell auf aktuelle Ereignisse. In diesem Fall geht es um eine junge Frau, die aus einem Auslandseinsatz zurückkehrt als Soldatin und nun versucht, diese Gewalterfahrung zu verarbeiten. Man sieht es geradezu auch in ihrer Körperhaltung, welche schrecklichen Erfahrungen sie gemacht hat. Sehen Sie die Pressekonferenz zu LILLE SOLDAT.
I made a mistake. I did a bad job.
Jeg er glad for, at du kom helt hjem. My girlfriend, Lille, this is my daughter Lotte.
Hello. Hello.
Selvfølgelig har jeg da et job til min datter. Du kan gå til hånd, køre mig og sådan.
Hvad er det, vi skal?
Bytte købmand. Det er min datter.
Jeg bytter piger med nogle folk, der arbejder over i Sverige.
Okay, ladies. Hun skal have en chauffør om en time.
Jeg kan da køre.
Ved du hvad? Chaufføren er mænd.
You look wonderful.
Fuck you very much.
Tror du ikke, jeg kan klare det?
Godt at se dig, Henning.
Lille er dame på i dag.
She is tough.
Min søster, hun er derinde. Hun har brug for hjælp. Har du ikke en nøgle? Åbn dør.
She's a soldier.
I better behave then.
You have a baseball bat.
Don't worry.
So did you kill anyone?
So, did you fuck anyone?
All the time. I am a saint.
23. 24. 48.
Hvad?
Min datter.
Du får lige dine penge igen.
Henning har været kunde hos mine piger lige siden jeg startede. Henning har altid opført sig ordentligt. Hvad vil du, Kælling?
It's a safe person. Mind your own fucking business.
Kom nu! I'll make you happy. You know that.
Skrid med dig, eller jeg hakker dig ind.
Det der tyske spørgsmål.
These
Det her, det er hvis der er tyske spørgsmål.
translation from German.
Okay.
You can put this in the yeah.
Okay. Eller franske, eller hvad det kan
But
være.
it'll be done in
Så får du
English.
engelsk.
Foreigners.
Jeg vil først sige.
Okay, welcome to the press conference for LILLE SOLDAT, LILLE SOLDAT, by Annette K. Olesen. The first press conference for a film in competition. I believe the translation is available if you need it. I'd like to introduce our panel. At the far end, on your left, we have Ib Tardini, I think he's a leading producer in Denmark, who's worked on more than 50 films, the production, mostly independent art house films for Zentropa. And he specializes, as I understand it, in the discovery of and development of young talent, including Annette. I think he's done all of your films, and Per Flø and others. Next to him is the writer of this film, who is also the writer of about half of all the films made in Denmark. And he is Kim Fupz Aaakeson, who's done A Soap, which was here a while back, and To Love Someone, Dances, a new film, an excellent new film. Then we have Finn Nielsen, who plays the father in this film. And he's one of the most dependable of supporting actors here. He has a main role. And he's been in, goes back to Babette's Feast and The Kingdom and Pain of Love and all sorts of different films. In the middle is the director of Little Soldier, Annette K. Olesen, who's back in Berlin, I believe, for the 4th time. She was here with minor mishaps, which won the Blue Angel, and then with In Your Hands in 2004, and then 1 to 1, and finally Little Soldier. Every 2 years you're back, and I hope you'll continue this to be here.
That would be lovely.
Trine Dyrholm plays Lotte, the Little Soldier herself, one of the most versatile actresses in Denmark. She's been seen in films like The Celebration, In Your Hands, and Soap, and recently Dancers, a completely different role. It's amazing ballet film, and Troubled Water as well recently. Lorna Brown, next to me, is in the role of Lily in the film. She's worked in films, television, radio, theater, and she's come over here from London. So I'd like to ask for your questions now, please. Yes, wait for the microphone.
Anne-Christine Loranger, Canada. Thank you for this wonderful film. I love Danish cinema. Thank you, Mr. Aaakeson. Every time I see a Danish film, I'm always amazed. So by the beautiful reality being portrayed in this film, so it's always a privilege. Miss Olesen, I would like to know what was your aim, your goal in making this film? What was your original project, and what did you want to express in this film?
Well, we very seldom have a very clear goal from the beginning. We start researching in a lot of different fields, actually. Kim Fupz Aaakeson said, why don't we make a gangster film? And I hesitated a bit about that. But then again, you know, sex and violence always works. So it was interesting to go into. And apart from that, Trine and I had been speaking about that it would be very interesting for the two of us to do a thing, to work on with a project that dealt with the relationship between a grown-up daughter and her father. We hadn't seen that so much before. And we just had a conversation like half a year before we began the project about how interesting we felt that would be. So we had a lot of different, ingredients, and then we did like we've always done. We started researching. We said, okay, it's going to be a gangster film, and Fupz said, why don't we go for trafficking? So we started a long process of research, and during this process of research, I had a contact with someone who a soldier who went to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I started a dialogue with this person, but I didn't really know how to put that into the story, of course. But then in the end, we sat with all these ingredients and we said, okay, how are we going to deal with a father and a daughter, trafficking, prostitution, and a soldier, And we tried to sum up, what the common theme was. And we just discovered that the theme, it's all about saving. It's all about how do you really save someone. That being a person or a country. And the fact that you might have to deal with, when you decide to save someone, you might have to deal with, or to confront yourself with your own motivation for doing so, because it's very often rooted in something very personal. So that became like what we went for when we started writing the script. In my opinion, maybe Fupz thinks that something else. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Please wait for the microphone.
Isn't it herself, in a sense, that she's trying to break free of her own past, her own childhood without a mother, and give this child a mother?
She's trying to save herself from a lot of issues, I think. But that being, having grown up without a mother, of course, that becomes an issue when she meets Lily. and realized the fact that she left her daughter. So she's got a lot of personal motivations, but I think Trine would be fantastic to talk about that as well.
Yeah, Trine, please.
No, but that's the whole issue in the movie, that when you save people, or you want to save people, that sometimes it's actually yourself you're trying to save. And that is Lotte's problem, that she, in a way, do overgreb.
She overgreb. How do you?
Lorna.
No.
Lorna, how do you say overgreb? No. She forces Lily to go back, even though she doesn't want to. And that is not very nice of Lotte, and that's because of her own motives, I think.
I think, of course, we realized very fast that we were dealing with 3 stereotypes. You know, the hero, the one who wants to do good, and the villain, and the victim. And what we really find very interesting, I think, whenever we do something or whenever we've done projects together, is to try and turn all the stereotypes around. Because, of course, there's no such thing as a clean hero, a clean villain, or a clean victim, you know, or a clear. So we try to, and of course the problem that Lotte meets in wanting to do good is that Lily doesn't agree that that's the best thing to do.
Yes,
and that's
she doesn't ask her. I mean, she just knows what is best for her, and you can't do that.
But I think sometimes when working and creating characters, it's you're doing yourself a favor having secrets. Also, you know, yourself. We looked at each other at times and asked, is she doing this because she wants to get back at the father? Is she doing this to save herself? Is she doing this because she's jealous, some kind of that of this relationship, or is she trying to do good in the world? And you don't have to have the answers yourself. It's good to have, you know, an area where you're kind of you know, doubting, and it gives, I think, good space for the actors as well to work in.
And the actors doesn't have to have the answers as well.
Okay, we had a question over on this, the gentleman over here.
Yes, hello, Jan Rumholt from Sweden, usual suspect. Thank you again for another nice film. Talking about saving, if I can use the expression making a difference instead of saving, that might fit into the film. So I shall proceed in my line of philosophy here. There is a little bit of the first world, if I may use that expression, trying to make a difference in the lesser fortunate parts of the world. You've been a soldier in Iraq, I presume it is. Is it Iraq?
We haven't actually decided.
Okay.
It could also be Afghanistan.
Okay, you've been somewhere,
we have,
trying to
Denmark
make it.
is.
You've been somewhere trying to make a difference, and you're also trying to make a difference, of course, in this specific situation with Lily and all this. Is there a comment in this film about the first world trying to make a difference in the third world and not always getting it right?
Who are you asking?
I'm asking anyone who the creators of the film. I might have a part 2 question after your answer.
Yes.
Yes.
But what we very often, Annette and I have very often discussing what will happen in the future about people are traveling around in the world, and I think we have talked about an idea, making a film about Africans coming up to Europe, because we're not worried, but we discuss it a lot. What happens right now, where everybody is traveling and poor people is coming to our rich country, and for me it's they're welcome, but it's an interesting case to discuss.
I think we you know, it's very interesting that I think the first, or the developed countries, which we belong to, of course, are faced with a very different reality than just 10, 20 years ago. And we had a politician some years ago in Denmark. She was a minister of immigration for a very short while, because she actually crash-landed her career by saying that we have to face the fact that in the future people will come to our countries, our type of countries, not just because of torture or war, but because of poverty. And I think that's the new issue that we have to deal with, that the social and political reality is moving right up, at our doorsteps, in our streets, because the world is moving closer in on us. Whereas, not very long ago, you could deal with that with a foreign policy or paying some money for a humanitarian organization. That's not good enough now. We have to deal with an absolutely different world, I think.
I think also...
and another thing we find out in the research about prostituting and trafficking surprised us very much, because in Denmark we have about 6,000 prostitutes and
foreign prostitutes working in the street.
6,000 in all, and 3,000 foreigners. But we thought that a lot of the foreign prostitutes was kept in Denmark by force, and they couldn't go home and so on. And we find out of all those people, there's only about 30 people that are kept in Denmark by force. The rest of them are here in Denmark, not here, but in Denmark because they are poor. They want to get some money because they have no money at home. So that's very interesting. They sell because they are poor. So I think that's also very interesting to discuss that matter.
I think we have a question over here, please.
I am writing for a Czech and German newspaper, and the question is first, congratulations for your wonderful film. You break the stereotypes in the kind how you are telling the story, and there are many points when you tell this story in the other way who the audience didn't expect. And in this case, it was really fantastic. I wanted to ask you only for the end and for these turning points, because on the end I remember for Casablanca, because the story of Casablanca, on the end they couldn't decide how they will do that. And my question is, if you started to make a scene, you are sure what you will do, or you discussed? And what is the part of Mr. Aaakeson, and what is your part in this creating of the story? That was the first question.
I think we do not do documentary, we do fiction, but still based in real world. And one of the things we were told by the research was they don't go home because the home is like without future, and it's really tough in many countries in the world. So we had to kind of, the happy end was like we had to twist it, and my idea about the ending was that the father couldn't hit his own daughters. They had to part without, but the actress Trine Dyrholm said, no, he will beat her up. So, and this is one of the things happening in Danish movie now, is that we're using the actors much more in the developing of the script, because we're working on the same matter, on the same movie, and there's a lot of ideas to be thought about and a lot of angles, and the actors is certainly now a part of that, the work with the script. So it wasn't the original ending that ended up in the script and in the movie, I would say.
And you're still angry.
Could he?
Additional question, please. You use music on the end. It's a little bit controversial in one scene. You use it use it sometimes, but it's very delicate. But there is one scene when it is very, very strong. I can remember what. And I think, are you in this case playing with it, or are you anti-dogma that you are using that kind of music that pushed the audience in one direction? Could you tell something to that?
First of all, this is not a dogma film,
No, that's clear. That's clear. That was a provocative question.
It's true. I did, together with my composer, Kåre Bjerkø, we decided to, you know, it's like to really enter the candy shop somehow, you know, because I've been very refraining from using too much music in what I've done earlier. But this time I really felt like, you know, exploring that area. So we decided to be a bit more courageous about that.
Okay, thank you. In the back we have another question.
Kirsten Dietrich for Jam Radio.
Where are you?
All the way in the back.
Here I was very impressed by your movie because you skipped the easy solutions as well as the very dramatic ones. I like this very much, and I have a question to the creators, I think, perhaps to Trine Dyrholm as well. Lotte seems to me a totally lost person, and I asked myself, what is it she is seeking? Is she seeking comfort? Is she seeking for a true father? Is she seeking for absolution for this never explained sins she did in the war she fought in? And yes, what did she search, and do you think she found it in the end?
I think she seeks everything you said, as all of us do, I suppose. But we actually try to make her quite masculine and quite tough. And then in the beginning, when she's out with her father, he's holding her on the back. And we try to make a little moment of her longing after being the little weak daughter, just being there on the big back of the father. And that's actually the thing that is inside of Lotte, that she's a little girl that is longing for love, for being protected, for being saved, for everything that isn't grown up. So, and of course the whole war thing is, she's traumatized a lot by that, and maybe that's also a thing she's trying to get away from herself, saved for herself, maybe.
But I think there's also a kind of wanting to want for absolution in her, I think. And I think the ending that we were talking about before kind of tries at least to sum up on all this, because she's somehow seeking for absolution in forcing her father to punish her, but also forcing him to realize his own weakness or his own his lack of commitment.
We talked about the last scene as a love scene between the father and the daughter. It's actually his way of showing her that he actually loves her, because that's their language. She learned from she was very little to do like this and to hit, because that's better than words in their case, or that's the way they can communicate. So in a way, she really begged him to hit her in the end, and then she can actually leave him for good, maybe, or just she can walk out by herself. And I think the end is quite hopeful, because she's actually walking out and the sun is going up, and I think it's a happy end.
Lorna, what about your character? Did you see it as a character who wanted to be saved, or you're in it for the money, you know? Or what about the relationship to the father?
I don't think that she is conscious of wanting to be saved as such. I think her life lacks tenderness, and there's a tenderness that develops between Lily and Lottie. You know, she's away from her daughter. she's in this situation. I think there is a connection between her and Papa, but there isn't a tenderness and a place that she can be herself. And I certainly don't think she sees herself as a victim. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Okay, we have, first of all, the gentleman here, and then...
Hello, I am Harris Seguid of the African Refugee News. First of all, I would like to say to the director, you're too humble to say that this is just an equation, because you are talking about a real problem that is happening in Africa, especially in Nigeria. You show the passport, so this is really a document. And then the second question is for the Papa. How did you feel because sometimes you feel unease to take this part seriously. You're always laughing, but we don't know characters that make this kind of jobs. They're always hard with the people. And how did you manage to create such a beautiful character?
Well, beside all what you have heard, I must say that my motivation to play this part was the missing of emotion between the daughter and the father. And the father's longing for her and what he thinks her longing for him was to me the motivation I felt so much about the inner longing. So you had to change from where you actually were normally to where you don't really can reach yourself inside, if you understand. I mean, if he had the words for it, I think he would say, I love you, I miss you, and let's have a life together. So the emotions was to me the most important in the way of creating that part. I felt very much for it because felt very much sorry for the man and for the daughter, of course, too. So that's what I can say about that.
Okay, this lady has another question from Canada.
Mr. Locke, you stole my question.
Sorry.
My next question is about Danish cinema as a whole. It's very, very different films, but all the same times portraying reality in which people are always taken at counter stereotypes. From all what I've seen in the last 10 years, there's a continuous style in Danish cinema that I can see about situations that are very intense, very characters that are taken at very close up, that we can fully identify with. Could you comment about that? Is this something that is a trend in Danish cinema, or is it just me?
I think one of the things that happened at some point was that we looked at the budgets in Denmark, and they are small, and we said, okay, what can we get? Lord of the Rings? No. Let's have a man and a woman in an apartment, and find the drama. And it was, this was like an obvious place to start, in real life and in the dramas that the present is generating around us. But lately there has been, we have had a Second World War movie last year that was quite very successful in the Danish cinemas, and we have thrillers now, and we're moving also in other directions because, we had all the divorces and the adultery, and we have been around in daily life, so now there's movie makers going elsewhere as well. But I think this, in a way, it was the right decision to make at that point, to accept the budgets are small and see what you could get out of them, how much drama could you get for nothing. So this was like the ambition.
But also, if I must comment, there is a new trend. It's not new anymore, but that you start early with rehearsals before shooting. So you actually develop the script together with the actors, and you research a lot, and you use many months before you actually start shooting, and I think that's a good idea. And it wasn't like that many years ago. Then you just got a script, and then you just started shooting. But now you're actually a part of the whole thing, and I think that's some of it as well.
Okay, the gentleman in the back, and then the lady all the way in the corner.
Paul Burns from the Sydney Morning Herald. I just wanted to ask you a couple of technical questions, but also a question about the tone of the film, which to me kind of reminded me in a nice way of Mona Lisa, which covers similar sorts of territory in one way, the idea of rescuing a prostitute. So I wondered what kind of films were in your mind, maybe when you were making this. Secondly, the soldier that you met who had been in Afghanistan, was that a man or a woman? And if it was a man, when did the character become a woman? Maybe that's for the writer. Do Danish women actually go into combat in Afghanistan? And last but very least, was that a rat in the back of the car?
No, it was a cat.
Oh, it was a cat. I wondered
and it was
about
by accident. We
I
didn't
wondered
put
about
it
that.
there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just couldn't. I had
We
to know.
couldn't afford putting it there.
In Denmark, it's raining dogs and rats.
But I could just explain, when we came in the airport in Copenhagen, we met, I don't know how many girls, soldiers, that were on their way to Afghanistan. I think 4 or 5 of a group of 20. But there were 4 or 5 girls going down there, and they are in really battle. And Denmark is really in war now. It's first time in the history since, I don't know, 18 something. No. We haven't ever been in war. Now we are going in the front. So for us, it's very serious problems right now. And we get a lot of people coming home, like, you know, from America, about the Vietnam. We have a lot of stress syndromes, and we have a lot of problems with soldiers coming home. It's really tough. It's very, really serious. So the story here is true.
We actually met a woman who Trine and I and Fupz met a woman who was a leader. Hvad hedder delingsfører?
Sergeant.
She was a group leader of how do you say that? A group,
a unit.
So a unit in Iraq, and we met her a few times, and that was quite impressive to have conversations with her and hearing her tell about her experiences. Yeah. But you were asking about the films that we had in mind when we did this.
The tone.
Yeah. Taxi driver. Well, actually, it's not. It's true. And once when we were in the car, Annette, she just said, "Oh, Lorna, you look like Naomi Campbell, and Trine, you look like Robert De Niro." And I was really happy because I was trying to play a man. So.
Actually, when I first read the script, it's interesting that you're saying about Mona Lisa, because when I first read the script, obviously I read it in English, and I didn't quite get that it was set in Denmark, but I totally saw it in the East End of London, and the fact that, you know, your father beat you up completely made sense to me. So I understand what you mean about the tone and in relation to Mona Lisa. It's quite interesting.
Any other comments on that?
Well, not really. Fupz, tone?
Well, it's Annette's tone, you know. Sad and lonely.
Longing all the time.
No, it's funny because it's not always you kind of have the tone in your head working on it on the way, but a movie is like having a child, I think. You know, it turns out somehow, and you kind of, okay, it's a redhead, and it's, you know, like that. So it's not like I mean, of course, you make decisions, and in the end about how hard you want to edit it and the music and so on. But still, in some strange way, it has its own life and it finds its tone somehow.
But I think the tone is. I think we've had somehow the same. Not the. It's very different films, but I think there's a certain tone, at least, to the 3 later films we've done together. In Your Hands and 1-to-1 and this one, Little Soldier. And I think maybe it also has to deal with the fact that we are dealing with existential matters, and we don't want to impose an answer. We don't want to wrap it up nicely and deliver it to the audience solved. We want the audience to leave the cinemas and try and deal for themselves with these matters. And that might also set a tone for at least these 3 films that we've done.
You know what they say, American movies has answers, European movies has questions. So this is a true European movie.
We have time for one last question in the back, please.
Hello, I'm Gesine Strempel from Radio Berlin-Brandenburg. It's a question to the director. And I want your comment on the camera work, that you gave the camera a huge place in that movie. And I like that very much, but I do not want to interpret it, I want you to interpret it. How you show the country, how neat everything is, huge pictures.
Well, I think for the films that we've done together, we've always used 2 cameras, first of all. So that somehow dictates a way of shooting. But also, we've also wanted the actors to be as free to move as possible. So we tend to use, or at least a lot of the time, use handheld camera because of that. So that the camera is flexible and can move with the actors. But of course we do a blocking and we decide, before we start shooting more or less how it's going to be. But if the actor suddenly does something else, I want the camera to be flexible enough to follow that, because I think you very often find beautiful original stuff in what erupts in the act of shooting. I can't hear you.
Well, if you, yeah.
No, what I really meant was, of course, I admired the camera work with the actors, but what I also did admire was how you show the landscape. It has a really active role in the whole story, and I wanted you to interpret that.
Well, we wanted the story to be set in the province, and we wanted it to be very clear that it was set in the province of Denmark. And we also wanted somehow to describe this well-ordered, nice society. Seen, it's winter, so it's not very, it's not like people walking around by their swimming pools, but we really wanted to describe this ordered society, and then have that somehow set up against the story.
Okay, well, thank you for your questions, and thank you very much for being here. We'll see you back in 2 years.